Michael Fosberg is an actor and author who, until about a decade ago, believed he was white. He grew up in a white middle-class family in Chicago, and he spent most of his adult life as a white man. Then his mother divorced Michael's stepfather, the man who had raised him, and she revealed a secret. Michael's birth father was African-American, and as you can imagine, it was a major jolt to his psyche. Fosberg eventually wrote about discovering his true identity. In the book, it's called Incognito, an American Odyssey of Race and Self-Discovery. He also turned his story into a one-man play. Look.
I heard the phone ring twice, and then a click. Hello? Hi. I'm looking for a John Sidney Woods. You're speaking with him. Did you live in the Boston area in 1957? Yes, I did. Were you married to a woman by the name of Adrian Pilposian? Yes, I was.
Okay, Michael Fosberg joins us now from Chicago. And Michael, thank you. We just watched you enact that fateful phone call. I want you to go through what happened next. But listen, okay, I'm looking at you. I'm from Louisiana. I have lots of relatives who look like you. I have lots of and I would not have known. I wouldn't have thought one way or another had I met you. I probably would have asked, or maybe it would have come up in conversation. But that whole time, you had no idea that you were black?
Yeah, well, I don't think the afro when I sported during high school really was a big clue for me. But no, I really didn't. I mean, you know, I grew up in a white family, a white working class family, so there wasn't anything there that really gave me any indication that I would be any different than what they were. So it was quite a shock. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went through
but
that.
You know, this place.
Go ahead.
This plays to the idea when you were saying that you have a lot of family members that might look like me. This plays to the whole idea that in the black community, it's kind of understood that there's lots of mixing and there's lots of different colors in a black family. You can have a very light-skinned brother and a very dark brother, and that doesn't occur in a white family.
Yeah.
It's pretty much just one tone.
And I'm sure in researching this story, you know about passing, right? There are lots of African Americans who went up north and passed as white, and there are lots of whites in this country who have black ancestors and probably don't even realize it. Okay, let's go on now. Let's go on now and take me through that phone call. So what happened after that?
Well, after I sort of braced myself against my dresser, and then I kind of caught myself in a mirror across my room and looked at myself quickly like, did I really just change or what just happened? And then we exchanged information, we exchanged phone numbers, and we swore that we'd stay in touch. And about a week later, I woke up at about 6 in the morning to a phone call from my grandmother. For the first time, my grandmother had called me to find out how I was, and as she said, where the hell you been? We've been expecting you 10 years ago. They had hoped that I would come back to find them a long time prior to this.
Okay. Were you upset by this?
Well, you know, you can't... You have to forgive in this life. I once heard that forgiveness is the hardest work that you'll ever do, but the most rewarding. And I think my mom went through something during the late 1950s, living in Boston, from an immigrant family. And I don't want to downplay my grandparents' racism or prejudice, but they were not unlike other immigrants that came to this country. Whether you were Irish or Italian or Greek, they wanted you to marry one of your own.
I get what you're saying. I get it was a different time then, but were you upset to find out, like, oh, man, I'm black, or did it not really matter?
Oh, was I upset to find that out? No, actually, you know, my whole life, I've felt connected to African-American people, to African-American culture.
Hello.
And so when I found out, it was like, this piece really fit. Yeah, exactly.
Hello.
Afro, the Richard Pryor routines. Yeah, all
I
of that,
wish I had more time to spend with you, but unfortunately, yeah, I'm up against time. There's another show that has to come on after this. But, you know, I think it just, maybe you can say this, it really is just an exterior, isn't it? And we put all this emphasis on things that's just an exterior.
Right, right. And I think that, you know, it gives us a sense of, you know, how do we look at people and how do people look at us, you know? It's a very different thing, and I think we need to reconsider that. So I want to encourage people to go to the website, incognitotheplay.com, and, you know, this is what I'm trying to do, Don, is I'm trying to heighten the national dialogue about the issue of identity, who we are, how we identify.
That's going to have to be the last word. As I said, it's just an exterior. That's what but in reality, we don't do that in the world, unfortunately. Thank you. Your story is fascinating.
Yeah. Thanks, Don.
All righty.
In celebration of Black History Month, we take you to the stage for a look at what many are calling an extraordinary tale of one man's quest to find his father. NBC5's Gene Sparrow has more on the play titled Incognito in tonight's Gene Scene.
Michael Fosberg's one-man show Incognito dares to announce unspoken family secrets to the world.
I mean, what if he has a family and this creates an embarrassing situation?
The play follows Fosberg's real-life journey to find his biological father. A journey that revealed something his mother never told him. His father is black. That knowledge kicked off a road trip to put his personal history together.
All my life, I've been very attached, attracted, connected to African-American culture, people, and I could never explain why. It was as if this piece that I describe as a missing piece of a jigsaw puzzle flew into place and fit absolutely perfectly.
Incognito isn't just about race. It uses race to reveal intricate family relationships and issues of every shade. And at least one lesson emerges from the play that seems to cover it all.
What if he doesn't want to speak to me?
To not judge a book by its cover, and that there's a wealth of information that's buried underneath in a lot of people's lives.
The driving force behind this play runs along the same lines as the purpose of Black History Month, researching, discovering, and knowing your personal history. That's not about skin color or the time of year.
It's not about labels. It's about, you know, your whole history, your whole culture is about all of those things that fit together, and there's no way that we can fit you or anyone, me, in a certain label, a certain box. Embrace it all.
My name is Michael Fosberg, and I'm your son.
If you like stories that are about history and about family's history, and you're interested in finding out more about it, you should go and check it out. Incognito is at the Apple Tree Theater in Highland Park through March 17th. Fascinating story, isn't it?
Thanks for bringing it to us.
No problem. No problem. It was brought to me, so I thought I would share it with everybody. It's a great thing, not just for Black History Month, but for anybody who wants to know who they are.
Yeah. Makes you want to go and find out your own history and document all that stuff.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this was all about.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Right.
This is ABC 7 News, Sunday morning.
I laid the piece of paper with the names and numbers on the desk in front of me and tried to sit down and pick up the phone. I grabbed the receiver but could not pick it up. What would I say if I get him? What if he doesn't want to speak to me? What would I do then?
Incognito is the true story of a man who begins searching for his father and ends up discovering himself. Chicagoan Michael Fosberg was raised white, but in his first phone conversation with his father, he learned he is black. His one-man show shows how that revelation sets in motion a series of new discoveries of family and roots, secrets and lies, confrontation and reconciliation. And Michael is here with us this morning to tell us more about Incognito. What a fascinating story. First of all, tell me how old you were when this happened.
I was 33.
33 years old.
Right.
All right, your background is, your mother is Armenian,
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
And your stepfather, your adoptive stepfather, what was he?
He's Swedish.
Okay.
Blonde hair, blue eyes.
And of course, you were adopted by him at what age?
I was about 5.
All right. Tell me the whole story. So you
Sure.
were adopted, and now we
Well, it's
go
a long
on.
story. It's a 2-hour story, but yeah, I grew up with, you know, in a pretty normal, nice family, and then about the age of, I guess it was 32, my parents, my mother and stepfather, got a divorce, which sort of threw me into this whirlwind of, well, who was my biological father? So
Right.
I decided it was time to go out and search for him. My mother had never given me any information, so I went and I had his name. I knew his name.
You did know his name?
I knew his name.
And where was this?
I was living in Santa Monica, California at the time, and my parents lived in the northern suburbs. So I went to the library, went to the phone book, because I knew his name and that he lived in the Detroit area. And this was 25 years before this. So I looked up his name in the phone book. There were about 6 listings of his name. I wrote them all down. I went home. I called the first name on the list, and it was him.
You identified yourself.
Well, I had to ask him a series of questions to determine that it was him, because how many men could have that same name? His name was John Sidney Woods. I asked him if he lived in the Boston area in 1957, which was where we lived. He did. And then I asked him if he was married to a woman named Adrian Pilibosian, which is my mother's maiden Armenian name. And he said that he was. And I was overwhelmed and identified myself and said I was his son.
And were there a series of phone calls, or did he reveal in that phone call that he was African American?
Well, we talked for a while, and he told me a little bit about family and whatnot, and then he said, you know, there's a couple of things I'm sure your mother's never told you. And I said, well, what's that? And the first thing he said was, well, first of all, I want you to know that I've always loved you, and I've thought about you a lot. And I was crushed, my father telling me for the first time he loved me. And then he said, there's one other thing I'm sure your mother's never told you. I said, what's that? He said, I'm African American.
So your reaction was?
Wow. That was all I could say. I couldn't say anything else. I was speechless. At the same time, what's interesting was it fit. It totally fit with me. I had identified with African American culture all my life, but could never explain how this fit in. And when he said that to me, it just fit.
So you took this and decided as a playwright to create a play out of this. Was this really to kind of work all through this for yourself?
Yeah, right, sort of a cathartic. I actually had initially decided to write a book, and I'd never done that before, but I thought, you know, this would make a really good book, so I started to write the book, and then I gave a couple of readings of chapters of the book. I had a salon where we had a bunch of people viewing art, and I was going to read some stories, and the response to the work was overwhelming. And I thought, well, I've never done a one-man show before. Maybe I should attempt this, and that's how it developed.
So I take it you met your father. You traveled and met your father.
Yes.
And what was that like?
Well, that's in the show. I have a story about that. That was pretty overwhelming, because the incredible thing about it for me was I look exactly like him.
Do you?
Yes, yeah. And it was scary and overwhelming to see someone that I look so much like. And I mean, there's like a mirror in front of me. And I, of course, met my grandparents, who are both still alive as well.
Is your mother still alive?
Yes, she is.
And how did she react to you finally finding your biological father?
Well, there was a little trepidation there, because at first, of course, I was very resentful that my mother had never told me about this. And so I wasn't quite sure how to deal with this, but a very dear friend of mine gave me a piece of advice that was very important. And he said, you know, your mother has had this shame that she's held your entire life, and you now have an opportunity to help her release that. And I realized that was it. That was absolutely it. So when I called her to tell her I'd found my father, she was very embarrassed and apologetic, but then she realized, as I was able to tell her, you know what, it's okay. You did what you thought was best at the time, and I still love you. I found my father. So our relationship has really grown since then.
What a great story.
Yeah.
That's a terrific story. Thank you for sharing that with us. You have to go out and see Incognito. It runs through the end of the year. It's been extended, actually, at the Bailiwick Arts Center at 1229 West Belmont in Chicago. And for information on the show and times and ticket prices, you can call 773-883-1090. All right, we're going to go take a break, and we'll be right back with more. Stay with us.